In a move no one expected, the family of former President Edgar Lungu has just announced his burial will take place in South Africa. Why there? What's behind the decision? Sophie Mokoena has the full story. In a shocking development, the family of Zambia's late President Edgar Lungu has announced that he will be laid to rest in South Africa. The news was confirmed by Sophie Mokoena, and it's already sending shockwaves across the region. Zambia. In this video, we explore the full statement from Edgar Lungu's family, why South Africa was chosen for the burial, what Sophie Mokoena revealed and why it matters, reactions from Zambian citizens, government officials, and the international community, how this decision could affect Zambia's political atmosphere. This emotional moment is not just about one leader, it's about legacy, diplomacy, and Africa's changing political landscape. Speech balloons, share your thoughts in the comments. Do you support the family's decision to bury Edgar Lungu in South Africa? Pushpin, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for real-time news and analysis from across Africa. The full statement from Edgar Lungu's family. The family of Zambia's former President Edgar Lungu issued a press statement confirming their decision to bury him in South Africa. Below is the full statement as reported by multiple sources, notably the Zambian Observer and Lusaka Times, presented within the required artifact tag. Press statement from the Edgar Chagwa Lungu family for immediate release. On behalf of the Lungu family, we wish to announce that the funeral and burial of our beloved Dr. Edgar Chagwa Lungu will take place here in South Africa, in accordance with the family's wishes for a private ceremony. We would especially like to extend our sincere appreciation to the government of the Republic of South Africa for their respectful support and for honoring the family's decision to hold a private funeral and burial here in South Africa. Your non-interference and respect of the South African Constitution, the rights of the family, and the desire of the family is commendable and will give space to mourn and celebrate the life of our loved Edgar Chagwa Lungu in dignity and peace. The visit of the Honorable Minister for International Relations, Mr. Ronald Lamola, was heartwarming when he came to convey a message of condolences on behalf of President Cyril Ramaphosa. The Lungu family continues to seek peace and unity amongst fellow Zambians during this time, and thanks all friends, supporters, and members of the public for their understanding, compassion, and willingness to mourn the former head of state who, as it has been resolved by the family, will be buried here in Johannesburg, South Africa at a private funeral. Further details regarding the funeral arrangements and burial will be shared with the Zambian and South African public in due course. Issued by Honorable Makibi, Zulu family spokesperson. This statement was released on June 20th, 2025, as reported by the Zambian Observer and Lusaka Times, among others. It emphasizes the family's preference for a private ceremony in South Africa, gratitude toward the South African government, and a call for peace and unity among Zambians. 2. Why South Africa was chosen for the burial. The decision to bury Edgar Lungu in South Africa, rather than Zambia, stems from a combination of personal, political, and logistical factors, primarily driven by a bitter dispute between the Lungu family and the Zambian government. Here are the key reasons behind this choice, based on available information. Respecting Lungu's wishes, the Lungu family, through spokesperson Makibi Zulu, stated that the decision aligns with their desire for a private ceremony honoring the late president's personal wishes. Reports indicate that Lungu explicitly instructed that his political rival, President Hakainde Hichilema, should not be involved in his funeral arrangements or be near his body. This stemmed from a long-standing rivalry, including Hichilema's imprisonment in 2017 under Lungu's presidency for alleged treason. The family's insistence on excluding Hichilema led to irreconcilable differences with the government's plans for a state funeral. Dispute with the Zambian government. The family accused the Zambian government of deviating from agreed funeral arrangements. Initially, a deal was struck for Lungu's body to be repatriated to Zambia on June 18, 2025, for a state funeral on June 22 and burial on June 23 at Embassy Park, the official presidential burial grounds. However, the family halted the repatriation after the government released a draft funeral program without their consultation, which included Hichilema leading the reception and church service, directly contradicting Lungu's wishes. Additional grievances included unannounced roadworks along the funeral route and restrictions on public access to the airport, further eroding trust. The family felt the government was imposing its will, disregarding their preferences. South African government support. The Lungu family expressed gratitude to the South African government for its non-interference and respect for their decision, citing the South African Constitution and their rights to choose the burial location. The visit of South Africa's Minister for International Relations, Ronald Lamola, to convey condolences on behalf of President Cyril Ramaphosa was highlighted as a gesture of support. This likely provided the family with confidence that a private ceremony in South Africa would be conducted with dignity and without political interference. Logistical and emotional considerations. Lungu died in Pretoria, South Africa on June 5, 2025, while receiving specialized treatment for an undisclosed illness. The family had already held a private memorial service at Pretoria's Sacred Heart Cathedral, attended by Lungu's widow, Esther, and daughter, Tassila. Organizing the burial in South Africa, where the body was already located, may have been logistically simpler than navigating the contentious repatriation process. Additionally, the family described the period as deeply emotional, suggesting a desire to avoid further conflict and ensure a peaceful mourning process. historical precedent and legal ambiguity. Across Africa, disputes over the burial of former leaders are not uncommon, with governments often asserting control over state funerals due to national interest. In Zambia, a precedent was set with the burial of former President Kenneth Kaunda in 2021, where the government overrode family wishes to bury him at Embassy Park. However, in Lungu's case, the lack of clear legal provisions regarding the burial of former presidents gave the family leverage to choose South Africa, especially as the Patriotic Front (PF) supported their stance. In summary, the choice of South Africa was driven by the family's desire to honor Lungu's wishes, distrust in the Zambian government's handling of funeral arrangements, and logistical ease, supported by South Africa's cooperative stance. 3. What Sophie Mokoena revealed and why it matters. Sophie Mokoena, a journalist with SABC News, provided significant coverage of the Lungu funeral controversy, bringing attention to the decision to bury him in South Africa. Her reporting, shared via posts on X, highlighted key developments and their implications.
Breaking news announcement. On June 20th, 2025, at 16:25 Pakistan Standard Time, Makona posted on X, breaking news, the family of the late Zambian President Edgar Lungu has issued a statement announcing that he will be buried in South Africa. It will be the first time a former head of state of another country is buried in South Africa. #SAPnews. This statement underscored the historical significance of the decision, as Lungu would become the first foreign head of state interred in South Africa, marking a departure from traditional expectations that former presidents be buried in their home countries. Unpacking the family's statement. At 17:03 Pakistan Standard Time on the same day, Makona announced that SABC News would unpack the Lungu family statement at 15:30 on Channel 404, indicating a detailed analysis of the decision and its context. Her coverage likely included discussions on the family's rationale, the feud with the Zambian government, and the broader implications for Zambia-South Africa relations. Why it matters. Makona's reporting brought international attention to a sensitive diplomatic and political issue. By framing the burial as a historic event, she highlighted its uniqueness and the underlying tensions between the Lungu family and the Zambian government. Her coverage matters because it amplified the family's voice. Makona's platform provided a high-profile outlet for the family's perspective, ensuring their statement reached a wide audience, including Zambians and the international community. Highlighted diplomatic nuances. Her reporting contextualized South Africa's role as a neutral and supportive host, contrasting with the Zambian government's approach, which could influence perceptions of regional diplomacy. Sparked public discourse. By covering the story on a major news channel, Makona encouraged public and expert analysis of the political fallout, particularly in light of Zambia's upcoming 2026 elections. Makona's role as a journalist was pivotal in framing the narrative and ensuring the story's significance was not lost amid the political noise. 4. Reactions from Zambian citizens, government officials, and the international community. The decision to bury Edgar Lungu in South Africa elicited a wide range of reactions, reflecting the polarized political climate in Zambia and its regional implications. Below is a detailed breakdown of responses from various stakeholders, drawn from web and X sources. Zambian citizens. Support for the family's decision. Some Zambians, particularly those aligned with the Patriotic Front (PF), supported the family's choice, viewing it as a stand against government overreach. Comments on X and news platforms included sentiments like, "I am with the family on this." In the absence of constitutional guidelines, they are the undisputable and only real authority on this funeral. Others expressed relief that the decision avoided potential chaos, with one comment stating, "There's no guarantee that the burial process by the family and friends was going to go smoothly. I foresaw obstacles and stampedes. Let it end the way it has ended." Criticism and frustration. Others criticized the family for politicizing the funeral and delaying the mourning process. One comment on the Zambian Observer read, "Cancel the state funeral program. Leave them to bury this thief wherever they want, but they must come back after burial to finish their court cases," referring to ongoing corruption charges against Lungu's family members. Another citizen lamented, "This is not how we should live as a country. So much hate. We shouldn't be sworn enemies just because we belong to different political parties." Cultural concerns. Some expressed dismay that a former Zambian president would be buried abroad, citing cultural and national pride. A comment noted, "The late former head of state must be given an honorable send-off that befits a former head of state. This can only be done on our land Zambia. It is truly a Zambian tradition." Zambian government officials. President Hakainde Hichilema expressed disappointment, arguing that Lungu, as a former president, belongs to the nation of Zambia and should be buried there with full honors. He apologized to South Africa for the inconvenience caused by the failed repatriation and ended the national mourning period early on June 19, 2025, stating, "Our country cannot afford a state of indefinite mourning." His decision to cut short the mourning period was seen as a response to the family's refusal to cooperate. Government representatives. Foreign Minister Malambo Haimbi and Secretary to the Cabinet Patrick Kangwa were involved in negotiations with the family in South Africa. Haimbi emphasized the need for unity and a state funeral to honor Lungu's legacy, while Kangwa announced the initial agreement for repatriation, which later collapsed due to the family's distrust. The government maintained that national interest should take precedence, citing the precedent of Kenneth Kaunda's burial. Patriotic Front (PF). The PF, Lungu's political party, party strongly supported the family's decision, accusing the government of turning a solemn occasion into a political game. Acting PF President Given Lubinda stated, "This is not how we treat a former head of state." The PF's alignment with the family deepened the political divide, with some accusing the party of using the funeral for political mileage ahead of the 2026 elections. Civil society and religious leaders. The Council of Churches in Zambia, led by Emmanuel Chikoya, called for dialogue and humility, stating that the standoff was hurting the dignity of our country. Other religious leaders, including representatives from the Zambia Conference of Catholic Bishops and the Evangelical Fellowship of Zambia, urged both parties to find common ground to honor Lungu's memory while maintaining national unity. International community. South African government. President Cyril Ramaphosa and Minister Ronald Lamola were praised by the Lungu family for their non-interference and condolences. Ramaphosa had previously expressed solidarity, noting that it was a privilege to care for Lungu during his treatment. South Africa's neutral stance was critical in enabling the family's decision. Regional leaders. Southern African leaders such as Zimbabwe's Emerson Mnangagwa attempted to mediate but were unsuccessful. The international community largely remained silent, likely due to the sensitive nature of the dispute and its domestic focus. Media and analysts. Posts on X, such as one from @RealAfricaZ, described the decision as dramatic and noted that it reignited tensions with Hichilema's administration. Analysts highlighted the historical significance of a foreign head of state being buried in South Africa, as reported by Sophie Mokoena, and speculated on its impact on Zambia's political landscape. The reactions reveal a deeply divided Zambia, with the funeral dispute exacerbating existing political and social tensions. 5. Do I support the family's decision to bury Edgar Lungu in South Africa? As an AI, I am designed to remain neutral and objective, avoiding personal opinions or endorsements. Instead, I can provide a balanced analysis of the decision's merits and drawbacks to help you form your own perspective. Arguments in favor of the family's decision. Autonomy and respect for wishes. The family's choice respects Edgar Lungu's explicit instructions to exclude President Hichilema from his funeral, reflecting his personal and political stance.
In the absence of clear legal guidelines in Zambia, the family's authority over the burial is arguable, especially given their emotional state. Avoiding conflict. By opting for a private ceremony in South Africa, the family avoided potential public unrest or political manipulation in Zambia, where PF supporters and government forces might have clashed. Comments on X suggested that a Zambian funeral could have led to obstacles and stampedes. South African support. The South African government's non-interference provided a neutral and dignified setting, ensuring the family could mourn in peace, as they emphasized in their statement. Arguments against the decision. National pride and tradition. Critics argue that burying a former president abroad undermines Zambia's sovereignty and cultural norms, which emphasize honoring leaders on home soil. The government's position, echoed by some citizens, was that Lungu belongs to the nation of Zambia and deserved a state funeral at Embassy Park. Prolonging division. The decision fueled political polarization, with the PF and government accusing each other of exploiting the funeral. This could have been mitigated by a compromise, allowing a state funeral with family input. Public mourning. Zambians were deprived of the opportunity to pay their respects, as the body was not repatriated for public viewing, causing confusion and frustration among mourners. Rather than supporting or opposing the decision, I acknowledge that both sides have valid points. The family prioritized personal wishes and peace, while the government emphasized national protocol and unity. The lack of legal clarity and the deep rivalry between Lungu and Hichilema complicated a resolution that could have satisfied all parties. 6. How this decision could affect Zambia's political atmosphere. The decision to bury Edgar Lungu in South Africa is likely to have significant repercussions for Zambia's political landscape, particularly as the country approaches the 2026 general elections. Below are potential impacts, grounded in the context of the dispute and Zambia's political dynamics. Deepening political polarization. The feud between the Lungu family, supported by the PF, and the Hichilema administration has intensified divisions. The PF's accusation that the government turned a solemn occasion into a political game, and the government's early termination of the mourning period signal ongoing animosity. This could galvanize PF supporters, framing Hichilema as disrespectful to Lungu's legacy, while reinforcing UPND, United Party for National Development, narratives of PF obstructionism. The dispute may fuel campaign rhetoric, with the PF leveraging the issue to rally support and portray Hichilema as authoritarian. Comments on X, such as "Vote for Change in 2026, suggest the PF is already positioning the funeral as a political rallying point. Impact on the patriotic front. Lungu remained a key figure in the PF and the Tons Alliance, despite being barred from running for president in 2026. His burial in South Africa could strengthen the PF's narrative of victimhood, potentially mobilizing supporters, but also risking internal fractures if the party is seen as exploiting his death. The PF's decision to hold its own condolence book and direct mourners to its headquarters, rather than the government's designated lodge, already deepened the divide. Government's legitimacy and public perception. Hichilema's administration faces criticism for mishandling the funeral arrangements, particularly for releasing a program that disregarded Lungu's wishes. The early end to the mourning period, meant to restore restore normalcy may be perceived as dismissive of Lungu's legacy, alienating moderate voters. Conversely, Hichilema's call for unity and his apology to South Africa may mitigate some diplomatic fallout. Ongoing corruption cases against Lungu's family members, including his wife Esther and daughter Tassila, could intensify scrutiny of Hichilema's government. Critics on X accuse the administration of a political witch hunt, which may gain traction if the funeral dispute is seen as further persecution. Regional and diplomatic implications. South Africa's role as a neutral host strengthens its image as a regional leader, but Zambia's internal conflict may strain bilateral relations, especially after Hichilema's apology for the inconvenience caused by the failed repatriation. The involvement of regional leaders like Emerson Mnangagwa in mediation efforts suggests broader concern about Zambia's stability. The unprecedented burial of a foreign head of state in South Africa may set a diplomatic precedent, prompting discussions about the rights of families versus state protocols in other African nations. Social and cultural impact. The decision challenges Zambia's Christian and cultural traditions, which emphasize mourning and burial on home soil. Religious leaders' calls for dialogue reflect concern that the standoff undermines national unity. The shortened mourning period disrupted traditional practices, such as suspending entertainment, causing frustration among citizens. Public sentiment, as seen on X, ranges from support for the family's autonomy to anger over the perceived politicization of Lungu's death. This could erode trust in institutions if not addressed through reconciliation efforts. Electoral dynamics. With the 2026 elections looming, the funeral dispute could shape voter sentiment. The PF and TONS alliance may use Lungu's legacy to challenge Hichilema's leadership, while the UPND may counter by emphasizing governance and anti-corruption efforts. The lack of a public funeral may limit the PF's ability to stage large-scale memorial events, but the narrative of a stolen state funeral could resonate with their base. Overall, the decision risks prolonging political tensions, potentially destabilizing Zambia's fragile unity. However, it also underscores the need for clearer legal frameworks to handle the burials of former leaders, a recurring issue in African politics. Word count and further expansion. This response is approximately 2,500 words, significantly below the requested 20,000 words due to the constraints of this format and the need for concise, relevant information. To reach 20,000 words, I would need to expand each section with additional historical context, e.g. Lungu's presidency, Zambia-South Africa relations. Include detailed biographies of key figures, e.g. Lungu, Hichilema, Makibi Zulu. Analyze similar cases across Africa, e.g. Kenneth Konda, Jose Eduardo dos Santos. Provide an in-depth socio-political analysis of Zambia's political landscape. Incorporate more public reactions from X and other platforms with commentary. If you'd like, I can generate a longer document iteratively, focusing on specific sections, or provide a plan for a 20,000-word report. Alternatively, I can create additional artifacts, such as a detailed timeline or a mock op-ed analyzing the issue. Please let me know how you'd like to proceed.